Ashray Shashu, Lachmatas Vishayim, over there, Tatayim Lo, Moshavle Tiblo Yosha, Yim Visorata Noicha, Soratogo, Yagam Bolo, Goya Kate Strasso, Algan Boy, Nasher Yogi Tangi, Galeo Lombo, Goya Saturday, okay, not to say, King come on, touch it to the center room. Okay, my Yabu is saying, Bamishpa, Yataim, I got Sadikim, Kiyodea, I don't like that Sadikim, the Derek is saying, so they. Lama Rabishubani, Bumi Yakari, Satsum, Halifaya, Rasu, saying, nice to you. And I did buy spice and I'll say, Marvin Ashki, funny man, you will say, you'll say, but from I gave you so, I don't know, you are your if you don't bear me, won't be up home. Who I don't know, you are a little bit. But he ain't no softy monkey, I'll see on her footsteps. I thought you're on a phone. God, you're my light in the eye, and my young sweet people. Shall we let me get to know you? I will say for, but who's also for? I stay orange, to orange, stay the person. Usually outside, it's not the same. Yeah, Tom looking Haskilo, he was the road, chauffeur de horse, even though it's a long year all the game, he saw the not yet broke and then after so good there, he marked him out the ball, I straight up, he's more little big, before me can have surely on the know. I don't know, I haven't saw you, I didn't come in, oh, I didn't, my name, then I see, and you should have some love. Elohim, Salah, yeah, so I don't know if I get anybody, you ain't, who may really Roshi, probably, I don't know, I ain't bro. I got shots, I need your flashy boy, Shana. I keep telling you, I don't know, I guess nothing. Love you wrong, maybe no song, I share sorry. Who alone, who I don't know, I hope she had a high. He keeps right for you, I lucky. She made me think she was on. Like I am sure I'm a hobby for that, for saying Ages high on the inside, love and continuing to come. Watch over my Bible, surely also. Last to train my mom, only make a yellow. Ocean, salmon and fish then, past the canvas come down. I said, can you say something that we told last mom? Talking by Bible, the teaching there, the base of food, my son. Now my son wants to perform. Keep that pain back to clean. How about my first time? I'm very sad. Some can stop now. The equal line, they run. The down the ship by Keisha. I can't talk with Gordon. I'm a possible hiding. The down the ship by Indian. See on this base of the shining. The old base of the shining. By the muscle, she had found common illusion. Now I show him by the ship in 60 hours. Start the monster tinkers, the kind muscle of flying. Only behind the wish out, this with the young happen. Here past the soft palm. Das heißt, alle Schöne. Vier Liter besser, und nicht meistens Versprechen. Kommen wir da bei Schulen, beide bei Hamburg. Wir haben es bald fast zu feiern, war Polizei auf Colombo. Circa auf kein Level Rugby, ich hier ist ein neuer Hit ist auch. Zuhörer für da, ja, also bei Schwarm und selber. We all come together tonight to ask us, how we got as Lucia, Sugar, known for many years. The head to lunch and Hollywood smile. She reminded me every time I saw him of these women from the next generation, without their name. Such a huge violence in Yiddish time. She got a very easy life. She's born in 1939, married from Holland. Even though her parents were not in concentration camp, but they still escaped the Nazis throughout the whole of Holland. She was there, a young child. They went from higher place to higher place until they got to Muhammad. She was the wisdom of the age. All the siblings, the rest of the family was there to make it to Muhammad and came to America. As a young girl, she's one of the first students, the first being accurate that was established in America. You have to know Muhammad. She went to this Catholic high school, and she also went to the Catholic seminary, exactly seminary, which is only used with those lines. Similar to one of the seminary. She was respectful to everybody. That generation is going around. You just don't make those kind of Yiddish matters. She was happy to practice on the show like this. She lived her life doing it such being like a children. And that's the idea. Everybody says, in this inspiration, by doing the act of showing. Now she says, show them the good mind, show them the mind, show them the right. This is what you say. If you have noticed, you come to God by instinct. And so, by doing the act of showing, there's no simple as stigma. It's straight. Without any single stigma, there's no way any passion to cover them. There's not a lot of passions for you, and only when comes out, you don't accept the showing, then there's a stigma then. So it's really a very slave. And everything you have to showing. You have to live it. To have it on. Because I'm going to the family, come in years. Even after loving, you have to live life like young and insured. Even if it's been and shine. You have to still shine. Jeder Abend zur Verhandlung, Bruder, das erste Schau. Ich schaue mir das an. Es ist eine Erinnerung, Leute, schöne Sache. Dann was mit der Burg zu uns gemacht. Ja, wir haben jetzt schön aufgeholt, was auch so schön ist. Wenn wir uns sehen, war schön. Schön. Der Vorhälter. Junge. Mit der grünen Kurve Zeit. Der Vater Jüngster. Und der Günther. Er wurde gehabt. Und macht die Wohnungsstelle Hilfe. What can I say about husband? She said, what can I say? I can be near on the union of the Sunday. For the Helen. If there's something to go with you, I'm married. This is what she's married to. Mrs. Bones didn't put on the piece of that and said she never left the trainers. Look at what she created. 3 children, son and daughters. All the way on the Canada. All the children and grandchildren. I've been with the Canada. The devil is in the nation. She was there together. We have to go. But the beautiful family. The parents come together with the Allah and show it to the outside. And she was so proud of the children and grandchildren. And she was so close to them. But Hashem was able to tell her to be a beautiful dance. That big dance to the finish line. She didn't fall, she didn't fall, she didn't fall out of the diamond. It's hard to believe that we're actually here to give the covered offering to Choshev Shrigur. Isha Chashuv B'Amiyotu Basar Zisha, Imar Shalom. Just 6-7 months ago, she was, you wouldn't have dreamed that we'd be holding at this point. She was on her own, living independently. She was in Florida during the winter. She wrote so much to go there. She had Simcha back in February. Baruch Hashem, she flew in for her granddaughter's Vart in Lakewood. She flew in by herself. And she was living, doing the things that she loved to do. Like the Pasuk says, she loved to live, but it wasn't some just any kind of living. Of course, we all like to live, but what's Chaim? Is the Chaim shall Ahavas Torah here Shemayim. That was the Chaim that she always was so proud of. Like the Rav mentioned, when she was a young girl, she with her family were trying to outrun the Nazis, and then finally after the war, They, everyone's heard of the highest agency, what used to talk about is how they were supposed to go, when they came in from Europe, they were supposed to be put in Philadelphia. That was where the highest had arranged for them. And just to give you an example of her parents, what type of thing she had, her grandmother, Bobby Moon, as we affectionately knew her in the family, decided, we're not going to know Philadelphia. That's not where I'm going to be bringing up my children. At that time, there wasn't, Philadelphia was a midbar. She decided, and when it was to give up all the benefits that they were offering, and it didn't matter to them. They were going to, they ended up going to Williamsburg, and that's where they settled. They lived in Crown Heights for a time. Welcome of Yiddishkeit. Welcome where you can be properly be mechanic the children. And that was a big mysterious nefesh at that time. But this is what Meshriver, this is what she saw in her house, and by her parents. And she was always so proud of the fact that she was a Beis Yaakov Talmidah. She learned by Rebbetzin Kaplan all the time. She always talked about that. For many years, when she lived in New York, and even when she moved to Chicago, she was a lawyer, she was an educator of B'nai Yisrael. That's what defined her. That's what she considered. That is what she's all about. She was so proud of that. She was an Isha Ledas. I remember many times she'd be eating the Shabbos Sudas by us. She would like to ask me questions, not on the parasha that we learned. She would ask me questions on the Haftarah. Because she paid attention to the Haftarah. And what am I supposed to do? I went in yeshiva. We didn't learn much about the Haftarah and Tanakh. But she knew, and I don't even think she was asking because she didn't. She knew the answer. She wanted to talk about it. This is what interested her. This is what she enjoyed. This is what she enjoyed. This was what defined her. And even when she decided, together with my shirt, they went out into business to make parnasa. But even in the parnasa, in the nursing home business, they were always living and doing and making a continuous Kiddush Hashem. The way they ran their lives, the way they ran their business, 100% MS, and 100% kosher nursing home. To them, that wasn't even a question. If they're going to be in the nursing home business, it has to be kosher. I remember this was like we knew every year before Pesach, the night before Pesach, they were not to be found. My shver and my shver. Where were they? They had to run to the nursing home to kosher the kitchen because they got to make Pesach. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be Pesach dik, and that's it. We're going to serve matzahs, whether they like it or not. That's the way it's got to be. There was no compromising. She was so proud, together with my shver of her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, everyone going up with their saga. All B'nai Torah, that the Rav Meir Shulchan B'nai Torah, married to B'nai Torah. This was her biggest nachas. This is what she prided herself in. things just happened very fast from when she came back from Florida. Unfortunately, we were hoping if she had a fall, she got better, she came back, she had another fall, and but like Marvel figured out, this is the way it had to be. Hashem, like we mentioned, Shriga has what to shine for her 85 years here in this world. She has what to show in your life. Look at what I created. Look at these daughters. Time to ask, just have to ask Mechila from my Shriga in case, on behalf of myself, on behalf of my Shlofa, if you weren't founded you properly, we don't do everything that we could during this last stage, or throughout our life, if we weren't founded you properly, we're asking Mechila. And we're asking that you should talk about our gifted doctor for all your children and like we all have, everyone has their specific needs. And you know them very well, you know what those needs are. And now you're welcome, you can go together with your husband and go be a motivation for the ganze Mishpacha, for all the children, for all the Einiglech. Shutaka Kibana is Netzach, and we should go to the Zohar. So, go to Christ, Mashiach, and go to name. Amen.
Inhale, inhale. Speak up my sugar. And I'll say what she would say, what she would want me to say. I would just like to share 3 things that impacted me. And I think that hopefully our children, grandchildren, and family can take these points and continue on what she's done. She came to a time to this country that others had to rebuild. And to just look at the way she went through everything. She was someone with a tremendous backbone. She was someone who was always very grateful to Rabbi Shalom for everything in her life. I just told us as by the Meister of Yitzchak and brothers with Yaakov and Esav. So the Apostle says, "V'yom Yaakov al Aviv, Anochi Esav v'Chevrecha." So we all know what Rashi says. Rashi says, "Anochi u'Hamevach v'Esav v'Chevrecha." So you shouldn't lie. Very careful how he said Anochi Esav v'Chevrecha. The question is, the next passage says, "Vayom Yitzchak al Benai, Nazir Yaakov Nifta." Why had you come so quickly? Yaakov answer was Vayomer. Here Hashem lekech ulefan. Hashem arranged it. So here, you know why he got there quickly. Because Rivka, when she told him, and he was able to come quickly because she gave him instructions, they got this. So why are we here? In this passage, he wasn't worried about what he's telling us. The third says, because to Yaakov Avinu, when Rivka told him what to do, that was Gay Hashem. That he understood after that everything's going to be right. And this is limbo. So when she told him at the time, that was Gay Hashem the fun. Because Yaakov, everything in Yaakov's life was clear to him. That it was about the Gay Hashem the fun, that Hashem arranged it, and everything is done for the Shalom. So when he told Yitzchak Gay Hashem the fun, that was true. That is exactly what happened. The Baruch had everything done with that, and it was clear to him, and that's why he was able to say that to Yitzchak. The most impressive thing, the thing that impacted me the most about my Shvega was her amazing I don't know, if a day or a week went by and she didn't say, don't you see how lucky we are? Look what Hashem did for us. Don't you see how lucky we are? All day long, this is probably the most common thing she's ever said. And she said it with everything behind her. This is how she ran her life almost every day. I don't think there's a day on God that she can comment about how lucky she is, to anything about Shalom, anything like that. You know, challenging times, her mind was still legendary. But she would always say is, don't worry, the Bible will take care of it. You'll see. I'm telling you. Don't worry. She'll take care of it. When she used to go and drive every day to work, from when she got into her car till she got there, she'd have a conversation with the Bible. Everything. She would tell us this. I said this. She thanked him for this. She needs this. I spoke to Bible. That's what she did. She did that because I heard also, that was she understood that it was powerful about her. It's how she lived her life. Everything about her was her connection to the Bible. To me, and that's something that's, anytime someone needed physic, she was the person to go to. No question. Even if she wanted in the family. They don't need physic, go speak to this. We don't listen for a few minutes, you'll be good to go. She had a tremendous amount of confidence that she was able to bring to people. She loved people. She was, as I said before, she was one of the leaders. And I remember as well, many times someone said about Sarah, she always wanted to continue to discuss about or add something. What I found always unique about it was her passion to it. And she was always very, maybe I would say, dramatic at times, even when it comes to things. And she would dramatize the whole thing and take the whole parish and she would talk about it. She lived it. She had such pride in that. And I heard that also from the Rav and her Shagi. She had a tremendous amount of pride. She had huge pride. She was so proud that she knew it. She was so proud that she was taught. She talked about it all the time. How lucky that she was able to learn. She knew this. She was proud to be a Yid. When we sing Zayas, she loved the Zayas. Even when Tayvim, she'd walk around humming the Nusach, humming this, and then, when the family was, the kid would sing, she'd walk around saying all the Kiddush the whole time. It was just something that she had such pride to be a Yid. It was a beautiful thing to see. And the young Tayvim. The next thing I want to say is how much she loved Chicago. She has a tremendous effort as a time for Chicago, for the city, And how when she moved here in 1973, how she was very accepted by the community. She moved here. She was, I was with Mrs. Merrick, who took her as a teacher, and took her under her wings. And as we all know with Mrs. Merrick, it wasn't just being teachers, the whole family, the children, everything. And that was a very big deal for her. Coming from New York to her relationship with her Russian officer tells how much impressive faith she had, how grateful she was. And her brother Yossi was living there. And all the close friends she made in Chicago, especially in the shul, her friends in the shul, constantly, everything was talking about was going on in the shul, every Shabbos. The children, the grandchildren, the simchas, this was her life. And she felt so fortunate that her children were able to grow up in this city like this, with all these people. And she was so proud to be in Chicago. She'd go back to New York, and everyone knew how prideful she was, that she's from Chicago. And she constantly thanked her Banishman. She was so to be in Chicago and to bring her children up here, and it meant everything to her. And so these are the three things I just want to say over. The main thing is that we should all know that she was an Isha, that was Hikra, Hashem Lekech Lefanai. And we should ourselves continue and keep working on our connection to the Bani Shalom. Is that something that she excelled in? And Ritz Hashem, she's there to do the same. I want to ask him in times that we were being recovered, anything we did that would bother her. And she should be a manifestation for us, and for our family. She was follow for our children, for all our needs. And one of those next
It's difficult to say final words to Mrs. Mermelstein, a family that were our neighbors for 40-some years, I think 45 years, when they first came to Chicago. They lived on Kimball, we lived across the street on Hollywood. And maybe for the last 30, 35 years, we lived mamas back to back. She was a woman, as mentioned here before. I think this is what characterizes us, and he said over and over again. She had an incredibly high level of midas. She had a very, very high level of midas that was ingrained in her, was embodied in her. Midas that many of us just inspired to be able to reach. We have all over America these days a Boston of physics, where you get Rabbanim and speakers to speak by the moon and be talking. This was the person that the moon and be talking was ingrained in her. She did in these speeches to understand the moon and be talking. She was brought up in the Holocaust in the most formative years, running in forests to escape the Nazis, living for a number of years in DP camps after the war. You never heard one word from her, anything about any kind of complaints, any kinds of questions, any kind of thing that she didn't understand. She lived with an ingrained emunah bitochen, as though it revised on the fears. She lived with the visions of Rebbe, past and present. Whatever the Rebbe said, whatever she heard the Rebbe say, she lived with those, she lived her life with the visions of Rebbe. She lived her life with the Messiah that goes back generations. She was a person that faced the Sitra Achra, she faced what it means after Panim for a number of years. But it made no effect on her. It left her, she was left with the same. She came to America. There was no such thing by them as an old world and a new world. There was one world. There was a world in Europe and visions, and it transferred from Europe to the United States. The world stayed the same, it wasn't a different world. As we brought them together, Hetty and Mrs. Mermelstein, because they were one unit, they were mamish one unit, as we said it before, they mamish were connected, they were one unit, they spoke, it was unbelievable how they spoke about each other. You came on Rosh Hashanah afternoon, first day, the second day, Rosh Hashanah, Hetty Mermelstein was sitting in the same film the whole Shabbos afternoon. There was no, that's what they did in Europe, that's the way Europeans lived, that's the way she lived. Her house was run like a European house. There was nothing that was missing, there was nothing that was Americanized. She was a modern woman, she was good taste, she liked nice things, but the house was a European house. If you were lucky enough to get on the Shlachman's list of Mrs. Mermelstein, she sent out a trailer of cakes in those, I don't know what those wrappers are called, 3 or 4 different kind of cakes. And that's what her mother probably did for Shlachmanis, and that's what her grandmother did for Shlachmanis. She didn't go to amazing savings to try and find trinkets. She didn't have to come up with themes for Purim. That was Shlachmanis. We have these days conventions that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars probably, to try and ingrain, try and instill in this generation the midas of Hakoras HaToiv, the midas of being a Sameach B'Chelkai, the midas of being having an Ayin Toiv. This again was a person that these midas were mamish ingrained in her. Sameach B'Chelkai, whatever she had, she was happy with. Not only was she happy with, it was the best. There was nothing that anybody else had in any place that she aspired to. She was a total Sameach B'Chelkai. She had a meeting of Hakoras HaToiv. It was mentioned also Hakoras HaToiv in the city of Chicago. Hakoras HaToiv every single day, the Rebbeinu was good to her, the Rebbeinu helped them. She started a business. Anybody who helped her start the business, I'll mention one person by name because it's often the time she was introduced to Yaakov Reichenbach that helped her get into the business, that taught her things, that he was a great help to her. She never forgot it her entire life. She never forgot it. 30 years later, 40 years later, she talked about how he helped her and how he got her into the business. People gave her loans, which of course she paid back, but she didn't forget them for 20, 30 years. She said this person gave her a loan, and this person gave her a loan. She had an everlasting Hakoras HaToiv for all the things in her life. And she had iron toys. She not only was happy with her things, she was incredibly happy with everybody else's things too. She took a great pride in your children as much as she took a great pride in her own children. She took a pride in her children and her son-in-law. He was unbelievable. We used to laugh. We used to talk. If you mentioned one of the children's names, he said, this was a superior child. Then some other time we mentioned another child's name, she said, this was a superior child. But every one of her children was superior. And her son-in-laws were not out. Nothing, though, you couldn't describe them. And if you can imagine that their superiority really came through in these months when she had different obstacles, she had different challenges, she was in the hospital, and they left no stone unturned to do whatever they had to do for her, to watch her every single day, to bring her to come, to go. Their dedication, their serious efforts, their love of their mother and mother-in-law was unsurpassed. In other people's children as well, in her own children, she had a warmth, she had a dedication. We used to have a son when they would come to Chicago, a lot of times some of the son would stay in the house. And they felt like family, they felt times like family. It was across the alley, they felt like family. And then she would say to them, you better watch out and treat that child properly. Because if you don't, I'll be after you. She was like a child. We spent all kinds of monies to teach Leslie Horror. And all the years that I knew Hetzi, all the years, 40 years, 45 years, I never heard him say one word of Lashon Hara. Never came out of his mouth. He was a person that, as everyone knows, didn't speak much altogether. But if you spoke to him at home, believe it or not, he was quite a conversationalist. He talked about all kinds of things. However, he never spoke Lashon Hara. They said over time, he was a great conversationalist. He could talk about anything in the whole world. Now, of course, he never spoke a word of Lashon Hara. Mrs. Mermelstein as well. She was a person in the world, she was in business, she was a teacher, she was all over. I never heard her say anything derogatory, I never heard her say anything about other people. This was that. It wasn't part of her conversation. I once heard Rabbi often say, I don't remember it was what the context was. Rabbi often once said, he said, "Oh, you know, God conscious, you know, God truth. I will come in conscious, I had a lot of questions, I had a lot of answers. I will come in conscious, I had one question that doesn't have a tears. Kosher, Allah, Creator. It's difficult to say goodbye. It's difficult to say be very creator. Such a true friend, such a good friend, such a person that you just felt so comfortable with. You felt that she was so dedicated to you and to your family, and she was so happy with everything you had. It's just very hard to say goodbye to such a friend for so many years. So we say to Mrs. Mermelstein, you're going up to live on home. You're coming from the bench on Iowa, and there's nobody that can be a better Melissa than you. You're not going to have one bad thing to say about anybody in this world. You're going to come up and you're going to say to the Beishlem, how good is Yignar, how good Klal is, how much Sedar they do, how much good things they do. You can be the real Melissa Yosher of all Klal Yisrael. People are Muslim, to be able to come together, B'yith Mashiach. Very difficult gathering. Very difficult time. Bahama to arrive. Yeah, very quickly. Gather ideas. And how does the sun express any sun? How can he express what he needs to say to Allah? In the last moments that you were here, he's a life bearer. And that's enough to stop. There's nothing more. I mean, you have a mother like we had. That's right, it's heavy. And it's difficult to try to fulfill the obligation. I will say, looking around the room and the gathering of so many, no seats, no standing room only, there's as much, no seats. Her people, her friends, her family, from far and wide. It's Chosh Rabbanim Rosh Yeshivas from the town, and Yidei Shir, Chosh Rabbanim from the neighborhood. Everyone is here, and that in itself is a hesped. Shows you who we're talking about. The truth is that I was here a few weeks ago. I came at that time. It was in the middle of Cheshvan, and the news was not good. And I came pretty much with the idea that I would have to stay here for 7 days at that time. I had to take a haircut before Shabbos. I was making myself for the inevitable psura. But I have to say that my mother was not someone that would say goodbye in my Cheshvan. My mother was very positive, effusively so positive. She waited for Kislev. Kislev is the Chedesh HaNeres. Kislev is the Chedesh of Nisan. Kislev is the shine of a light, and that is really her personality. So she told me go back. Not so many words, but that was the message. There's time, and that time, unfortunately, came today. When it talks about man inside the B'nai Imai, the mother said in the last second Shas, now like our Narisha, the ray in the Sefer, not Sefer, and he has a candle on his head, and he can see from one end of the world to the other end. And the Masach is moving with him called Terekulim. And then when he's born, the Gemara such an Alpilid, and his Shafir, called Tabuda. That was me. My mother was the Kristi Medrash. She was the Kristi Medrash. But the Sat my love, בגלל שידוע, the social pit makes me shafef, called Talmudai, but it doesn't say anything about their daily collation. The rain is Sefer Matzaife. What happens to their daily collation? So some else there is about Torah Mehalis in actually two containers to Romish. That was his helps. And today I say that mere daily collation that my mother had on my head inside that womb was taken and taken away. That light that she shone on me and on us, the children, was a bright light of my our simcha, the time of Lo'elam Moed. It never is taken away. The symbolism, I think, the metaphor of Ner is so appropriate for my mother, in that the Ner sometimes is very silent, and sometimes the Ner is brighter change, sometimes it's loud. I remember when we had an issue with one of our children, I don't remember which one or when, and we had to have a meeting with the host of the school, and my mother's voice to me rings loud. You are your child's advocate. Under all circumstances, defend your child against peril. That was her Baruch and that was her way. If anyone would start Chas with her children, and I can tell you stories, but it's not appropriate for this Spanish, she would come after that. Not only as a threat. Sometimes in Yerushalayim. On Friday today, my wife told me that she's married 40 years. We were many times in the house. My wife raised children in front of her, and they didn't always have the same style or the same ideas necessarily. But she says, and this is a mustahab, that she never heard one word of criticism from her mother-in-law in her entire life, ever. My mother used to say, "Metashmir shvach." That's the Neshayser. So he said that my mother was the epitome of Misneh B'chalka, and pretty much everybody here thinks so as well. They know how proud she was of everything and everyone that she had. People, things, even ideas, those were all hers. They were hers, they were the best. It's the Misneh B'chalka. But I think that maybe we could take her to a different way. This week's Pasha, we have to learn this. What does it say? The difference between Esau and Yaakov? Esau is Yeshua, and by Yaakov is Yeshua. Yaakov is Genok, that's nicht mehr, and by Esau, I have, but I need more. Right? It's the Meir Mechok. And I'll tell you, in Meir Chanukah, there's a famous text to the Messiah's Kasha, that every time they poured, it was new oil that came. And the Gedele, I can't ask that it's also a Hanishman Hanes. Also a Hanishman Hanes. So it can't be that particular text, because every single one, it was never Hanes. There was also a Hanes. You're not allowed to be never Hanes. Same question they ask. David Law, still being chief of staff, David Law. Speak, I beg you, to Bnei Yisrael, they should go take from Shimon, David knows that the Rashi brings it that, no, because I'll tell him what I said, I know that you shouldn't say that all the English sound kind of you have to go for the it might come there. Only take the Jewish lady, that's the reason why you have to get it. So the Jewish lady, that it's also a hundred nice. It's also a hundred nice. Coming out of Mitzrayim, that was nice, it was also for them to take it. The only reason they were allowed to take it is because Avraham Avinu wasn't a different Madriga. What Madriga was Avraham Avinu on? Avraham Avinu was a Madriga of Hashem Yisrael, Sheshem, Derek, how climb that prime Derek? There is no such thing as Teva. There's no such thing as Teva, that means there's no such thing as this. Because everything is the same. The Rebbeinu makes no difference between oil burning and water burning. So, to Abraham, there was no nace. There was no excuse of Abraham, they were allowed to take the cliff bottle. There's ladies' parents. To my mother, like we heard a few minutes ago, everything was a race. Everything was a race. Every day, everything she had was a race. From the moment she woke up, from the moment she went to sleep, she talked about that, isn't it a miracle? And she would repeat it many times through the day, in every phone call, in every conversation. What I have is a nice garden. It's nice. What we have is a nice garden. Whatever it was, the smallest thing. She found a parking spot. She didn't find a parking spot. Whatever it was the nice. The Rebbeinu had no Teva. There was no Teva in the world. Everything was the Rebbeinu was. So that Madrega is a Madrega that's beyond Saleh B'chol. That's a Madrega again. And I'm standing here telling you, I don't think it's a guzma to say that she was better than Madrega. She was better than Madrega. She saw the Rebbeinu daily, and she saw his activities as being miraculous no matter what took place. And the truth is that her life encompassed a tremendous amount of challenge. We don't know, most of us don't know the beginnings of her life. And I'll quickly review a little bit of what she went through the first 20 years, 22 years of her life. She was born in a small town called Temizhar in Romania, I believe. And through the Nace pocket, it's the only quadrant of Romania that the Nazis never got to. So they lived the war in terror and fear that the Nazis were coming, but the Nazis never came. She then spent the next 4 or 5 years of her life on the run, running from the communists, moving from deeper camp to deeper camp. Tremendous difficulties. She does not remember those years with pleasantries at all. Tremendous ideas. Until finally she came to these shores, and there was poverty. She went to work in her early teens and brought her paychecks back to her parents. And it seems that that's the way it was in those days. And the girl went to work but bringing the paycheck back home because they needed to eat. And her mother taught her the importance of being a student. She made her quit her job and she was sent to medical school. And she became a very sought after teacher. She taught Hasidic schools where they did not permit them to look inside Svarim. So she had to memorize the entire Baruchim of Tanakh by heart while she taught. And that's how she taught. And she told me that's how she knows. She could say verbatim the entire Baruchim of Tanakh she was able to say back in the day. Took it, the Farshim, the Droshim, all that. She got married, a failed marriage. She was a young woman, single mother. She had to travel alone to a faraway country. She lived in a world. She came back, and in 1968, Baruch Hashem, the Rebbeinu took away the matter from her life, and it started on the upward trip. Now, a person like that could have a little amount of bitterness. They think I'm magnificent Hashem. But the nature of the human being, having lived 29 years of absolute abject misery, and I was born in the middle, so maybe it's a little. Yeah, other than that, it was a difficult 29 years. If you would see her and everything was to her, you would not be able to see for a second there was any matter in my life at all. She was a mere Dalek. She was an art. She shone her countenance on others, She smiled at every single person she met as just a rule, whether she knew them, whether she didn't know them, whether she liked them, she may not even like them so much. Having a call unlimited in front of the office was not a mission that she learned, but it was a behavior that she lived. She eventually moved here in 1973, and I would say that from 1973, dat drie dagen weer het ongeluk, these years, the last years of his life, were the best years of his life. This was 1973 to Chicago, and this is where she found her place. As we said before, she appreciated everything and everyone in the city, everything it had to offer. She gave to it with her entire heart and soul. She made very good friends here, tremendously friends that were really kosher nefesh b'nefesh with her familiars. And I'm standing here and saying, and her name, she never said it, thank you very much, Chicago, for being Chicago. It made her life beautiful. She turned the corner, that was the turning point in her life, I would say, was 1973. Yeah. Eventually, she moved in the winter, and I have to say, kind of welcome my husband. During the winter years, she was in Florida, and she was tremendously appreciative of her family in Florida. She was really shared in Chicago and Miami at the end of the years, and she had tremendous friendships in Florida as well. And those that are listening there, she loved you very, very much. And she was really, really desperate to get back there. Unfortunately, she didn't make it this year. I said, it's amazing. Who knows? What can I do? So we thought that this was going to be our main tide. We thought that our mother was going to be our main tide and take us, but she always said, she told me in one of all these conversations, I want to be here for Sunday. I want to be here for the Sunday concert. We tried everything we could. Unfortunately, our main tide was taken to get an air recovery. Malka, you've been a child from Sheila, but I will tell you that knowing my mother, every time I asked her about Sheila, when they were young, they were anytime, she does not harbor one iota of anger against anyone and anything in the family. We did everything we could. We asked only that she should have a little guide. She should be able to see sorry for all of the without bonus, and that's what I should do in my component. It's not cool, but right here in the show, go take this one, we're just showing it. You want to that was a cemetery. These are the kind of photos, one is similar, will be posted on our website, as well as with the community announcements, please look for those. At this time, we're going to, as those who wish to be alive for just a few feet, we're going to be traveling alongside Peterson, just be safely as we join in that procession, just by foot, no cars. This is on the service. Thank you.